Let's get started. All right, so week one of working on safe faces. This is my little mini series where I'm sharing my journey on pretty much from start to finish, me creating this app and the road to first 100 users. So in this first episode, I'm going to deep dive what I worked on the first week. If you want to see my week 0 or my prelude video, you can watch it here on Instagram and just follow along, follow me there. I'll be posting the whole journey, but in these type of videos, more long form, I wanted to give more in depth, kind of give you the screen share of like my workflow, how I go about it, and everything in between, because I feel all that is important just to share the insights on people who may be interested in making an app and just kind of how I go about the whole process. So this week wasn't some glamorous kind of like we're just fixing buttons week. What I am making something that is using AI, so there's a lot of training, there's a lot of trial and error. So that's really what we're going to be focusing on, since that was really the big obstacle for me this week as I was fine-tuning things. So with that being said, let's talk about the QA loops. So a lot of people probably have been hearing about this topic, loops, graphs, etc. on Twitter, and kind of like a rabbit hole. And once you see one tweet, it's like endless. This is how you correctly use loops. This is how an engineer from Claude uses graphs. Like all of that's kind of like almost feels like doomsday content, but it's actually very necessary, especially in this workflow where I'm constantly having to, check if this is right, check if this is working, and it's a constant back and forth. And I don't have the time, right? I work a 9 to 5. I do have a full-time job, so working on this, I can't just be on my computer, quote unquote vibe coding and just responding every 2 seconds. So I needed to create something to validate, to test, to provide results, and to log any of these errors. So if there's any mess ups or things that are repeatedly not working, I'm able to kind of really deep dive on that. So that is what we'll be going into. And before we do that, let me just kind of break down what I'll be using and everything like that. And then I'll kind of deep dive in a screen share about how I went about my QA loops and things I did just to make sure that there's less me having to QA it, and more so these agents jumping on that and making sure that they're able to do that and provide me any logging information, so I'm able to actually like direct it in a good direction. And instead of every 2 minutes to give me results, it's like every hour and so on and so forth. So that way there's just more meaningful results every time there is a test or kind of a QA. So let's go ahead and deep dive, and I'll screen share and walk you through what I have, and then we could just really go from there. So let's begin. All right, so first things first, I'm going to run through the software and the apps programs that I use for this. There's not a lot. It's because I am making an iOS app. I am using Xcode. This is essentially, you have to use Xcode if you're wanting to create an iOS app. Uh, Pretty self-explanatory. If you were to use like Android, I would probably be using Expo, so that way I could build out both at the same time. But in this case, I just wanted to focus on iOS, so we use Xcode. And then we not only use Xcode, but Xcode has an MCP server, and that's really going to give us access to our code and to Xcode. Um, so that way it could get access to the source, it could get access to running a simulator, it could get access to anything it needs inside the Xcode app. And we connect that MCP server to Cursor. So this is what I use to essentially create what I'm creating right now. As you see, it is an agent native, pretty much IDE, I like to call it. Some people might not call it that, but it's essentially an IDE. Like, let's just, like, for lack of better terms, here I harness everything. I connect everything to Cursor. So in this case, we are connecting the Xcode MCP, and I'll show you how I do that and exactly how those communicate. So there's that. So this is what I use. I'm not sponsored by Cursor or anything. I just always get asked, what do I use? And so this is what I use. And I'm not like a Codex hater or a Claude hater. I'm actually the opposite. I just don't like being married to just a GPT model or a Claude model. I like to really be agnostic and use all models because they all serve a different purpose and they have skills and they're just better at things than others. Certain models are. So this is what I use. Okay, so there's that, and let's go ahead and dive in here. Excuse me. So the first thing I wanted to talk about before we get started and show you any sort of like coding or anything like that is really just like how I go about setting everything up. So when I had just explained, like I have to train the AI, right? Like that's a literal thing. I can't just like expect AI to know what to do. Like that's just impossible. AI is in reality dumb until you give it context and make it smart. So in this case, I needed to train it, right? And I'm still going to be adding more um, videos and photos, but I wanted to show you here how I added different folders to kind of help the AI train in different formats. So in this case, the baseline folder here is just basic videos. And then the crowd folder is really just videos with crowds in them. So that way the model is able to just really be tested in different formats and different ways. This one has more of a motion focus. So there's a lot of things going on. It's very fast. People are moving. Occlusion, very important. I feel like there's a lot of things here that just move, and I just wanted to make sure that we're actually able to master that, right? You want to make sure everything's good, things getting in the way, that was important. Orientation, these are just videos kind of filmed in portrait mode or anything like that, or even landscape mode. I wanted to make sure that it understood different formats. People who use this app are going to be recording and or uploading videos, so the way it was orientated is also important. I didn't want it to be kind of just confused when it saw something different. And then you'll see just a bunch of photos. You'll see scene cuts, which I didn't really add anything here, but it's really the same as occlusion to me. Because I'm not creating like an edited movie or anything like that, but I do plan on adding more scene cuts videos as I train this more. But for right now, I felt like the occlusion was a great start for this. And same with selective reveal. It's kind of the same thing. I just wanted to make sure that we actually get some proper training in before I start giving it some more difficult things and just start overwhelming it. Because one thing I know about with AI is as you start to, work with it, you could end up down a rabbit hole where it's just kind of, I don't want to say hallucinating because in this case, I've gave it proper guardrails, but it could just be focused on things that I'm not really trying to have it focus on. So I'm giving it little bits and pieces at a time. So that way, as we progress, it's not just like overwhelmed. And then tiny faces is really just a bunch of faces that are small within the video. So something that's hard to see, something that it comes across. And then this is kind of the baseline of like, not really the baseline, but just kind of the foundation and making sure that, um, you know, the app is able to run like this pipeline of videos and run this gate and decide if it passes, yes, or if it doesn't, and so on and so forth. And yeah, so what I mean by gate too, by the way, is essentially just like, does this work or does this not work, right? And it's just a, a test of things being submitted and then things being questioned and then things being audited and then things being logged. So there's that. So let's go ahead and show you what I have in Cursor here. So in this case, I did tell you I have the Xcode MCP. So if we go to where is it at? Of course, like as I'm in here, I can't find it for some reason. They move it. I don't know, man. Hold on here. Da 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 da. Weird. They used to have like an MCP, but you'll see here we have the MCP. There's no tools loaded right now. Let me turn on Xcode and load that up so that way you can see the tools enabled and you can see just how I'm not in Xcode at all. Like that's kind of the key point here. I'm actually not trying to be in here. I'm not a fan of this IDE, which is why I love using the MCP because I could stay in Cursor. And so as I pull up this MCP here, we'll click on that Xcode tools, connects, and so on and so forth. So we are connected. And from here, I'm able to actually prompt and so on and so forth. In this case, I'm just going to run a test without prompting. I just want to show you how this works together and how I would go about it. I'm not going to run a whole gate or test right now because it takes about 15 to 30 minutes of just actual testing all these videos, and I'm not going to bore you with that. So what we are going to do though is just test a simulator and show you that, okay, like how I go about seeing a video being successful or seeing a video not being successful and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and let this load up, and then I'll provide you kind of like, okay, this is what I do as I test and so on, so forth. So let's go ahead and pull this up here. Let it load. And I'll pull this simulator up once I get the log. Once the gate runs and it provides any sort of test, any sort of information saying it passed, saying it didn't. And I'll pretty much confirm if those quote unquote passes that the agent decided was a good pass or not. And let's go ahead and load a video library. Load a video here. I'm going to load this video. It's probably the most difficult video for the model right now. And not to mention, I am not using any like open source sort of library or anything. This is all uh, Apple's or Swift's technology that we're using here. So I wanted to keep it as simple because I didn't want to just incorporate a bunch of libraries or things like that. I felt like Apple has the power to do this, and I wanted to do it and just keep things proprietary and not have to worry about paying some other developer and so on and so forth on fixing this. So um, that is why I chose to stick with Apple or Swift, I should say, in making this. So as this is analyzing, we'll take a second here. I'll let this kind of fast forward so you could see what I'm doing. But in the meantime, we could actually just just take a little preview. But let me just wait. Yeah, let's just fast forward. I don't want to jump ahead. This is my first video, y'all, so I'm trying to get better at documenting my process and just how I work here. It is preparing the video, taking a little longer. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and play it. How I go about it is I play the video completely without stopping, and then I run stoppages, and you'll see blue squares as you play this here, and you could toggle those on and off. But sorry. And this is how I'm able to identify any ghost blurs, any weird panning blurs, and just kind of point out to the uh, AI like, okay, do you see the squares floating X, Y, Z? So that's how I'm going about it right now. And I think this coming week, I'm going to come up with some sort of skill and loop to identify if the blue squares are floating or anything like that. So that way I'm able to not even point that out. I could just distinguish it, which would be a lot easier. But let's go ahead and run it through. So we'll play this. And okay, I saw a floating ghost blur there. As you can see, there's a lot of people here. So this is a real test on its skill. Um,
Short demonstration or a quick lesson about what we have been learning, how to play the buckets and how it can be done. All I'll let the kids speak for themselves. This is Phoenix.
Okay, so this was actually a successful build for this week because last week it was lagging a lot. So I was able to optimize that and smooth it out. So that way the video wasn't being kind of messing up on the frame rates or anything like that. So I'll go ahead and run it again and I'll just kind of keep pausing and stopping and trying to identify, okay, when does that ghost blur happen here? Like any panning, boom, I just missed it, but we'll go back and capture it. Okay, all good there. I don't like the overlaps. This is something I will just screenshot and paste into the chat. And that's what I'm trying to minimize here. When it pans away, it's still aligned with the previous frame. And again, we're trying to smooth that up. I don't want floating blurs. I'm trying to make this as clean as possible. So when parents are able to like use this video, it doesn't mess up their video. I'm trying to just truly keep the video almost the same video, just with, blurred squares, right? So that's why I'm trying to look, blue square right here on the pair of jeans, and I'll go ahead and screenshot that, take it here, on to the next, keep going, yada, yada, yada. This is important here. There's a lot of overlap, so I like to pause it to make sure that we're capturing things. A little too soon here, a little too soon on this one. Boom, there's another floating one, right? So this is another important one. We'll screenshot that. And we should be good. And you see there's another small square. Just trying to capture all these bugs, and you can see two faces is in frame, which obviously there isn't two faces, it's one face. So and that's really it. So now that I have that tested or screenshotted, I'll go ahead and jump in here and I'll pull up some text and say, hey, I screenshotted all examples from the video of ghost blurs, and it seems like some squares are lingering a second or two longer than they should, and because of that it causes it to float or appear on some sort of jeans, shirt, or even another face. And what I'm realizing that is the squares aren't technically in the wrong place. They're just stuck to where maybe a previous face was. And when it's painting that fast, it doesn't have time to adjust. So that's what I'm trying to clean up. That's really the goal here. And I'll just repeat that. So it seems like some squares are, when panning, are stuck at previous positions. So it may look like a ghost blur, but in reality, it's it's just still floating, just still aligned from a previous frame when it was on a face. Okay, and go ahead and proceed as you would with the game. Okay, and I will literally just let this do its thing, and it's going to have access to any code it needs to, again, via the MCP, and then I'm just going to allow it to run the whole trial and error again, and you might see a little glimpse of that, but I'm just not going to run through the whole thing because that just sounds like a very, like, just, I don't know, very exhausting thing to do here. But what I do think is important to share is making sure that there's a log of everything. So I do keep a log here, and we have the QA, we have the state. So I'll provide like a current status, right? And whenever it's done doing its flagging and doing its um, checks and balances, I make sure that it logs this because I don't want it to start changing the architecture. I don't want it to start thinking, oh, let's just adjust this now and try this. That's such an important skill and something I'm trying to even do better at. With, as you code with AI, it's not just like, let me just let it do whatever it wants. It's like actually what you don't want it to do. You really want to provide some guardrails so not that you're not in the position of messing up even your architecture or things that do work, right? And so here, I'll not only provide the log, but you'll see that there's fixtures here, 33 active, 1 disabled. You'll see multiple folder copies because I added multiple videos, and it'll tell me the last day I tested and exactly what passed, which is the motion aware. Genes, it's already been something that I've been trying to iron out. And then here it's like do not regress, right? Like this is something I told it, like we need to make sure we keep certain things alive. Like I'm not trying to have AI constantly, let's try this out. Let's see if this works. No, there's things that do work, and it's important to make clear to say that it does work, right? If you're constantly telling, or prompting like this didn't work, well, make more clear what didn't work so that way not only does it fix it but also make even clearer what does work, right? Like it needs context. So if you're not telling it what did work, it's just really going to assume that, okay, well, these didn't work, so I'm assuming everything else is kind of open field that didn't work. So let's just like make sure you set those guardrails on what did work, and this is kind of where I provide that so that way it doesn't just hop around. Like it's super important. And then the production bar, just kind of getting like a rate, like percentage wise, like how often you know things show a ghost blur and how often things kind of are jittery. Like that was something I had to really like monitor. Is like, okay, when I'm uploading a video, things are getting super jittery here. Like I'm trying to reduce that. So you'll see kind of how I keep this kind of benchmark of like this is the jitter we want to keep, and so on and so forth. And then the scenario scoreboard. So this is where we're able to like determine, okay, what's the status on this? If it's green, that means it passed, right? And it goes through every scenario: baseline, occlusion, motion, crowd, tiny faces, orientation, and photos. And it's going to go through every single fixture and tell me if it passed. And sometimes it will say green, even though it's like when I tested out in the simulator, it didn't pass. That that is okay. Like I'm fine tuning this as I go. I'm not trying to again, the AI doesn't really know much, so I'm not trying to quote unquote have that expectation off the bat. It's, when I'm creating this loop in this gate, I'm trying to make sure that it understands, okay, each time that I test, it's getting better. Keep out for this, and just making that scoreboard and that whole gating process just even stronger, right? So that's really how I go about that. There's a scoreboard there. Screenshot proof. This is giving me pretty much everything I told it on 8.8. So we're just keeping examples of like, okay, what was the issue here, right? Like what did Milton say that was constantly happening? And this is kind of like my to-dos on what I want to fix the most. Like these are the things that are happening often right now. And so we need to make sure that, we work on these, and that is the lag floating, like I just talked about. Jeans and lap sticky, like there's boxes on jeans sometimes because it's just like, it's panning so fast it doesn't realize to turn off. And there's, just scenarios like that. So we're logging the things that are still issues, and it's able to know, okay, if we've fixed this issue or not. And if we have, we can reduce this list. And so that's how we're really going about that. And then open failures. These are just kind of common, we'll call it fixtures that constantly fail. So you'll see that there's a lot of ghosts. There's a lot of, what's it called? Issues and temperature issues and just kind of like lagging and kind of every failure you can think of within these fixtures, which makes sense because occlusion is the hardest and the crowds are the hardest things I'm trying to tackle right now. So I think it's so important to like actually jump on that and make sure that we have this recorded because these so far are the hardest things to tackle right now. And so I'm trying to keep that in place. And then the fixes. So these are things, again, keeping track of the things that did fix, right? These are things that are good. And we are still fine tuning, but I wouldn't say like are the biggest hurdles right now. Like we are fixing the panning and trimming as we go. I am fixing any lag or any trails as we go, and they have gotten better. So it's little things like that that we want to keep track of for the agent so it knows what has been fixed and just giving it more context, right? And then next actions, just providing, this is essentially what I do. I will then rebuild it. I then provide the agent anything that's wrong, and then it'll investigate, and then it will just go back and just, we'll do this again. And then of course we have the history, just keeping track of everything that was good and what was not. I think it's so important that we log everything so that way the agent is just not just doing the same things, you know? So we don't want it to just be in that loop of doing the same thing. We want it to constantly be doing better and just making sure that everything is in place. That's really the key here. So that is really everything regarding the STATE.md. This is probably the biggest part of this. I can deep dive more about kind of more of the technology that I'm using and everything like that in my blog. So feel free to check that out and just kind of see a more like in-depth breakdown of everything. But I just wanted to show you how I use my gate and how this week we had fixed. Um, Really, the video optimization is no longer jittery, it's no longer laggy. It actually has way better alignment now, and that we're actually able to provide a lot more progress to this. And then if we're talking reports here, there's tons of reports, y'all. Tons of reports. I'm not going to deep dive on those. This is really just for the agent. In terms of the harness, we're just essentially providing more information for the agents, and I'll deep dive on this on the blog. It's just too much to talk about in this video. But right now, you'll see on my left how things are testing and what exactly if it passed or not, and it'll provide any sort of explanation as to what happened and what didn't. And if it failed, it will adjust. And if it passed, it will continue and move on to the next fixture. But yeah, that is really everything in this first week. I just wanted to recap again and just kind of show you what I am using, why I use it, and then show you the whole kind of breakdown on this, a short breakdown in this video on the QA loop and how I use a gate to make sure that I'm not just sitting here every 2 minutes responding to this. Like this agent is going through a process of trial and error and making sure things are being tested, logged, and having, you know, explanations and even results. So yeah, that is everything here. And I think that's enough for here. I think enough screen recording just so it's not too much. It's already 25 minutes, but yeah. So let's go ahead and jump back to the camera. All right, so that's my week in a nutshell. It doesn't sound too crazy, but it's actually very important. And you'll understand more as you test the app what I mean exactly. But the big wins though for me really was just a real fixture gate and me being able to really see if there's you know, using this trial and error that there's still errors involved, like it's not always going to be perfect. Again, this is AI. I provided a lot of videos and photos to train on. That way it has something to actually like measure and compare to, and whether this is actually a good validation or a bad validation, you know. And a lot of times, like when I'm making these edits or looking at the feedback, you know, a lot of it is, it says it's validated, it says it passed, you know, green thumbs up, but we might catch it ghost blurs over some paragenes or a random kind of like floating square that's not really aligned with the kid's face or anything like that. So we're trying to tweak those out, and as I proceed with the Q&A and kind of helping out this loop get smarter and add more kind of checks and balances, you'll see throughout the week how I am actually able to tackle the ghost blurs and you know, things like that without breaking the gate, so to speak, and things like that. So yeah, and I don't want to go too long in this video. I just wanted to share and show you kind of what that that Q&A process looked like. So I hoped it helped you and just gave you some insight, and let you know that, you know, I do use Cursor for everything. It's really, in my opinion, the best harness when it comes to trying to utilize an MCP or utilize any kind of model there is right now. And I'm not kind of married to any model, I'm more agnostic to it, so I can utilize a lot of those models for different skills. And like I said, in this case we did use, as you saw on the screen recording or the screen share, I mean, me utilizing the MCP from Xcode and giving access to that, you know, source code, and it being able to test the simulator, and then providing those results and logging them, and so on and so forth, and just how much easier that is to have access and to utilize Cursor in that way. So yeah, stick around for the series in the next video. If you really want like a nerded out, like in-depth kind of explanation of all this, I did create a blog article as well, so you'll be able to see just how, you know, kind of intense this could be. It looks like a lot, but it's really just, like I said, just creating these loops and these checks and balances, so that way there's less me having to respond every 2 minutes and more of making sure that this AI is actually testing things out before it says, hey, I think I solved it, right? And not just kind of like saving me time and allowing me to work and let the agents work and allowing me to... I left off there, but I just wanted to close out. My battery died, so circle back. This is the closing statement. Like I said, if you wanted to learn more and kind of get more in depth and follow along just kind of my process, I documented it in my blog post, so you can go check it out here. And then yeah, any questions, feel free to ask. I'm available. You can reach out to me on my Instagram or email me, but nonetheless, yeah, I look forward to getting this, and I look forward to getting my first 100 users, just so we can help protect the children here on AI. So yeah, thank you, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Deuce.